about tea. We're going to be looking at Britain's biggest tea sins, and who better to sort of give us some insights other than sort of Grant Harrold, the Royal Butler and UK etiquette expert, and Jimmy Petruzzi, the tea expert and founder of the UK Tea Academy. And I must admit, I'll sort of get it off my sort of chest early. My biggest tea sin is probably, dunking digestive biscuits and making a mess everywhere. And, I'm sure that's not pleasant for the people around me, but there you go. And I must admit, I do switch from tea to coffee, and on some days I have both. So welcome to the show, Grant and Jane. Great to have you on board. Can you give us a bit of an insight in terms of what some of these sort of tea sins are?
Grant, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, when it comes to the tea sin, this is what Jay and myself have been having a discussion about, is because when it comes to tea sin, there's quite a few out there, but I think we've agreed that in your own home, how you want to have your tea is entirely a personal choice. You're king, queen of your castle. But Oatley has done some research into the kind of crimes, if you like, against tea. And the list kind of made me laugh, because there's a couple of things there that we found shocking, but then one or two things that kind of make sense, because when we teach about tea etiquette, it's kind of right up there. For example, adding your milk after you've poured your tea, which is a very old tradition going back a few centuries, where the more modern things of using carbonated water or reusing your tea bags or even putting tea in a microwave, I think we're both horrified at this idea, but if we meet somebody that's done that, they should probably pack their bags and leave the country forever. Yeah. So these are the kind of things you don't want to kind of see. And if I was those people, that if somebody has actually done that, I was in royal company, or got invited to a royal party, that I certainly would be telling them that I put my tea in a microwave. I think that would be the quickest way to be shown the door.
No, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more with that for sure. And I think the other thing too as well, I must admit, is if I'm going to have my sort of quota of tea throughout the day, I want to make sure it's something I really enjoy. I really sort of like, I don't want to sort of like use up my quota and not enjoy. So everyone has their own way of sort of wanting their sort of tea made. But I noticed that sort of oat milk got, and I must be honest, for me, oat milk in coffee, yeah, in tea I'm not so sure, but I noticed that was kind of a surprise for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people who have already switched to using an oat drink instead of dairy have been laughed at by their family and friends for getting away from tradition, which is a bit of a shame really, because it's really good to have an open mind and try something new. And we have to remember that there's a lot of people in this country with dairy allergies or lactose intolerance, and therefore they're looking for something as an alternative to dairy. And when you discover oat drink and pour that in instead, it's actually a really successful addition. Both Grant and I have been discussing this today, and we've both switched. At first not expecting it to work, but actually realising, I think I switched about 2 years ago, and finding that it really does work. So oat drink in tea, for me, is a real thumbs up. And otherwise I would have to drink my strong black teas without milk at all, because I wouldn't be able to tolerate it. So I think these alternatives just really make the whole tea drinking exercise and enjoyment really fluid. People are willing to change if they will give it a whirl.
Absolutely. I must admit, Jane, with me, I've sort of to and fro with oat milk and dairy milk, and dairy milk generally doesn't agree with me as well. But the sort of taste, it's one of them really. To be honest, it's I've got to be honest that I haven't found an alternative that sort of, and that might be a psychological thing, that sort of tastes the same. Have you got any sort of tips? I mean, I'm going to write this down, because every time I sort of go and give up milk a go, I just don't get that same taste. And even though sometimes if I do have too much dairy, I'm conscious of it as well, I kind of regret it as well.
Good. Yeah.
I was going to ask, have you actually tried Oatley Semi by any chance?
No, I haven't. To be fair, Grant, I'll jot that one down. To be fair,
it's really. I mean, it's something it's one of the ones that I've actually tried. I mean, I started off with the barista with the coffee one, and then moved on to it. And I think Jane, you were talking about the Semi as well, because you were saying
it's got less fat in it. So
yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, absolutely, Jen. That's the goal for me is to try and cut down on fat. That's for sure. And I think a lot of people obviously listening probably agree with that. But like you says, it's one of them where I must admit I went through a phase where I tried different types of milk alternatives. I thought, well, I may as well not have milk at all. It's sort of happy medium. But can I just get that again? So the oat milk that you mentioned there, just sort of for our listeners and for myself, for that matter. So it's oat with okay, I get what you mean. So oat with semi-skimmed. Okay, I get you. Yeah, definitely. And I suppose that's something. Is that something that you could ask as well if you sort of say you went to maybe a coffee shop? You could say maybe a mixture of both.
I think there's a lot of coffee shops and tea rooms who are offering oat drink as an alternative. I was in a cafe on Saturday, and people don't bat an eye now when you ask for oat drink in your tea or your coffee. It's quite mainstream now, more for coffee than for tea, but it is definitely out there. And I think as people are beginning to be more adventurous, it's going to become a really good option.
Absolutely. Now try.
And also,
Sorry, Grant. Yeah.
I was just gonna add, just we were talking about the semi as well, that also the interesting thing is, sometimes you add different things to your tea, more so in tea, coffee as well, obviously it can split, where it doesn't split, which is really nice. You can actually have it and it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can add things and you can see if it changes it or drastically makes it different where it doesn't, and I think that might be one of the things that maybe people don't realise. I just wanted to mention that because for me that's quite an important thing as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, I must admit, last week I tried coconut milk and it didn't really work for me, to be honest. And I went for a coffee with my daughter for a coffee, and she had coconut milk. I thought I'll give it a go too, and it just didn't sort of work for me type thing. But that's interesting stuff, really. I mean, I think that's part of it, really. It might also be what we're used to as well, to be fair. But I must admit, at the time, I have tried alternatives, and like you said, I suppose now things are more available. But in terms of, say, etiquette in general, is there any sort of like tips or ideas if anyone sort of like is sort of maybe they've been invited to someone's home for a cuppa, or maybe they're sort of like inviting somebody, and it's nice to sort of get an idea and have some idea of what sort of etiquette to sort of get some idea what etiquette they should consider.
I don't know what I think Jim might agree. I think if you get invited to someone's home, just kind of follow their lead. I think people get so worried and panicked, especially if you're in a royal home, about getting it wrong. Where the reality is, if when you're around in someone else's home, I do it as well. If I came to your home or Jane's home, even though I've got my way of doing it, I would follow their lead. And normally when it comes to tea, obviously somebody's going to play mother, if I can say that, or maybe father these days, mother, father. Someone's going to take the lead and actually be pouring, actually doing the pouring and doing the offering, and then what I would do is be watching what they're doing. And I think the thing, as I said, in my home, if I'm doing that, I just make sure I've got a good variety of everything from the teas to, say, with the milk and the oat drinks. I put everything there so that I'm kind of covering everything, so people don't have to hopefully ask for something, hopefully. So I think that's the kind of secret, is not to worry too much about it and just go and enjoy the experience of having a nice cup of tea.
Yeah, no, I think, Jimmy, it's all about the taste, isn't it? I don't think it really makes much difference, if any at all, if you put the milk in first or afterwards. It's just what you like to do. But what is important about your daily cuppas is the taste, that you actually get something you really, really enjoy. And it's just interesting that Oatly have started this whole debate about whether or not it is a crime against tea to put oat drink in your cup of tea. Some people consider that a crime. I don't think it's a crime at all. I think it's just an interesting new alternative that people might find worth trying.
No, absolutely. No, I agree entirely. And for the reasons mentioned before, dairy doesn't work for everybody as well. And obviously the fat in the milk as well. And that's something I've become more conscious, in the last few years, to be fair. And I have tried different alternatives and mainly down to taste, really. And I mentioned earlier before, back in the day, I used to like to have some biscuits, and I suppose you read the room. I wouldn't do that if I'm at somebody's house type thing that I didn't know well. But if I'm at some family's house and they put a couple of biscuits out there, and you feel really comfortable, then I'll drop one in the cuppa and sort of go from there. So I kind of read the room and get an idea of what sort of and what's important to people. I think it's really important to sort of if something's important to somebody, just make sure that we are polite and sort of do what works for them. But can people read more about this? Is there anywhere they can go to have read a bit more information around this? Anywhere you can signpost them?
Yes, absolutely. Oakley have set up a WhatsApp, and the number to get into that is 07463 940 047, and it will allow them to actually share their opinions if they're trying Oakley in their daily cuppa.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's a very interesting debate.
Absolutely, for sure. And I want to thank you for your time. And on that note, I think I'll go for a cuppa myself now. So, speaking of...
Try that Oakley semi and see what you think.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Join that WhatsApp.
Absolutely, will do. Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Jane. Have a great day. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Ta.